Good evening and welcome everybody to Sim Racing Online. You join us here for the third round of the Formula 1 1967 Championship. This is going to be an epic race. In France, we are at the Clermont Ferrand circuit, 1965 version of this circuit, which is 5 miles and 8 kilometers long. So it's longer than the circuit that is in modern day, sometimes referred to as charade, but we are using the Clermont Ferrand version 1965, which was built and opened in 1958. It held the Formula 1 Grand Prix from 1965, 1969, 1970 and 1972. But we are racing 1967 cars around here, so this is what we are up for. So the drivers tonight have the opportunity to use 8 cars out of the car set we are using. So we have the Brabham BT24, the BRM P83, Cooper T81, and the Ferrari 312, the Honda RA300, the Lotus 49 Eagle Westlake Mark 1, and the McLaren M6A. So lots to choose from for our drivers. Now our drivers do need to pick a different car for every single round of the 6 rounds of this championship, so that adds a little bit of strategy to the championship. Now saying so far the championship, we've had 2 rounds. First round 2 weeks ago was at Mount Panorama, again the 1967 version of Mount Panorama, which was very interesting, very tight, very twisty. That big long Conrod straight going straight into the final corner was a big test for our drivers. But then a second round last week was at Longford, also in Australia, which proved to be quite difficult for a few people. We had a few accidents, a few people doing some barrel rolls into the fence. But we are sure to have a bit of a different Grand Prix today, because this is a tight and twisty circuit going up and down the mountain. So I'm hoping we're going to have quite a few finishes tonight, but it's going to be very difficult for our drivers. Very difficult indeed. So next week we'll be at Fuji, the 1968 version with the banking for the first corner. Then we head to Canada for Mosport Park, and then the USA for the last round of this series, Watkins Glen 1965, on the 27th of May. So the story so far, season standings are as follows. Maddie Shepherd is at the top of the sheet at the moment, or the top of the championship at the moment, and she is followed by Costas Kanzouris, but it's quite a hefty total that Maddie has so far, because Maddie has won the first 2 rounds. Costas Kanzouris is the closest finisher with 9 points versus 18. Then we have Julian Pors in 3rd, Michael Masrick in 4th, and Lars Hagman rounding out the top 5. It is a sparse points on offer today, because it would be 9 points for a win, 6 points for second, 4 for third, then 3, 2 and 1. So top 6 are going to score points. So how about we actually go out on track and actually see what our drivers are up to. They're practicing away. It won't be long until they have their qualifying laps, but we'll see them out on track and see what they are up to. So, as I said before, we are using the 1965 version of this circuit, so tight and twisty. There isn't many straights on this track, and my track map that I've got to help me around, or spotting some action around this circuit, is quite big and it covers my screen. But we have 16, well, in fact we have 8 minutes left of practice. So we'll have to see what kind of practice time he's doing. So Maddie Shepherd is topping the timesheets at the moment with a 2:54.0. So 2:54.0 is the time to beat at the moment. Of course, people might be out on their their race runs. And this might actually be the first time that we see a driver out in a McLaren. So Phil Brown is not in a McLaren. It looks very similar to McLaren, but that is a Brabham, and he overcooks it, unfortunately, into the verge there. So you see that the verges, they are quite high, kind of a replacement for curbs, I suppose, but these are French countryside country roads, I would suppose. This circuit is in the centre of France. So hopefully no one vaults that verge there and ends up down the mountain, because I don't think they will be coming back. Costas Canzuras has chosen the Cooper for tonight's race. Now looking at my cheat sheet, and if I can make sure I find out who is who and what is what. So Costas Canzuras second in the championship at the moment. Looking down my list, so Costas has picked the Honda and the McLaren for his 2 cars of the season so far, but has now decided the Cooper may be well suited for this circuit. There are a couple of cars that we haven't seen chosen yet. Looking down my list, the BRM is one that hasn't been a popular choice, but we have only had 2 rounds so far. And I was hoping to actually see the logo in the list there, but there are 8 tracks to choose from. Let's see if we can get some sound, because I don't think the sound has come through for you. That's better. We've got some engine sounds for you. You can actually hear what's going on now. So the lovely sound of this Cooper through the hills of France. Now we do have a couple of drivers. This is technically their home Grand Prix. So Julien Pors and Romain Lebrun are our French drivers this evening. So hopefully they have a good run for what is their French Grand Prix. Maddie Shepherd has decided to take the Brabham today. Her first 2 cars were the Cooper and the Eagle. So you see, you've got to really judge the apexes of these corners quite well. They do flow one into the other. Sometimes it can be a little deceptive where you are on the circuit, and I'm sure I'm going to get confused. I've got a list of corner names in front of me, but it's going to be very difficult to to be able to figure out what is what. So coming down the hill, just looking up my so the Champeau Crossroads, coming into the, what's that, Farm Bend? Along this short straight, and we head to what looks like a very or one of the tightest corners of the track. You go into a double hairpin. So this is one. That's the little bridge, and then we have another long hairpin that takes us up the hill towards. I can't pronounce that in French, so I'm not going to. So you see, there is a little bit of banking to take our drivers around the course. Now, the last bend on the course, the Rosier Bend, there is a reason it's called a Rosier Bend. I believe in real life it does have a picture of a famous driver on the hillside, famous French driver. So Costas Canzuras is getting it all wrong, but it does look like you can come off the verge there and continue on. So 3 minutes left of practice. The drivers have not got long. See, the sun is very low in the sky. Hopefully that doesn't cause a problem. So you see that our pit lane is also unprotected. So drivers have got to be very wary coming out of the final corner. Being sure not to put a wheel across that white line, because they will receive a penalty for it. Now, they have been warned in the driver briefing about this. So hopefully they heed the warning, because we don't really want anyone with any drive-through penalties coming forwards. So Tony Talviti in the Honda in this round. Tony Talviti has only taken part in one round so far, where he took the Eagle, so he's decided to take the Honda. So come out to a very tight part of the circuit. Tips down into this very banked hairpin. I think if it wasn't banked, they'll be heading off into the trees there. But you're basically traversing the side of a mountain until you head to the infield section down near the start-finish line. But they didn't run this course, as I said before, in 1967. The French Grand Prix was taken by Le Mans Bugatti at that point. But they did return in 69 and 1970, and their last round being 1972. I think perhaps the cars were a little too fast for the course at that point. As we got to the 70s, they moved to, I suppose, more traditional circuits for the Formula 1 calendar. So we have a Lotus driver in front of Tony here. I believe traffic is going to be quite difficult. You can see it's already quite difficult to follow other cars, because each corner flows into the next. There's only a couple of places where there is a short straight, perhaps get a little bit of going up to back of another car. So drivers have got to be very, very patient today. So we'll have to see what happens. That is the Lotus driver of, I believe that's Bob Loblaw. I'll have to look at the entry list. I believe that's his first Grand Prix today, or will be his first Grand Prix today. I'm not seeing him on the list. Oh, I believe that is Rick Law. So Bob Loblaw has a different name there, so I'm going to have to add him to the sheet. So it looks like we are running over into qualification. So this should be very interesting to see what our drivers will be doing. So time has changed, there we go, and we're off into qualification. So just over 10 minutes. I would imagine that drivers are going to get about 3 laps in if they can. So a Honda looks like it's out first. So we do have 3 Hondas on the track at the moment, so they're waiting at the light at the end of the pit lane. So I believe that is Tony out front there, so wants to get a clean start, doesn't want anyone in front of him. I don't blame him. This course is going to be very difficult to navigate as it is. So this section here is probably the only part which is relatively straight, so I'd imagine we might have some passing opportunities. So in fact Tony wasn't the first out. Now 2 people in front, so Michael Masaryk in another Honda is the first person out. That looks like a Brabham just in front of Tony here. That is Lars Hagman in the Brabham. So Tony wants to get round Lars as soon as possible. So drivers have got to be careful with this outlap, because it is a very long outlap, nearly 3 minutes long. Just warm up your tyres, warm up your brakes. Make sure that you're not pushing a bit too hard. And all our drivers are in the same kind of section of the track. They wanted to get out of the pits as soon as possible so they could get as many laps in as possible, get as much practice in as possible. Now we do have rules with Sim Racing Online. If you've been with us before, you'll know that the rules to do with qualification are that you have to do an out lap, your fast lap and your in lap. So Lars has decided to let Tony go. He's got a little bit of a space behind. I believe that is a Ferrari behind. Or maybe one of the Coopers. That might be Costas Kanzouris just behind. I believe it is. There we go. So Costas Kanzouris just coming out under the trees. So second in the championship at the moment. So Costas Kanzouris does have 9 points in the championship. Second driver in the list. He has got a second place in his first round so far, but fourth place last week at Longford. I think he may have been quite surprised to get fourth place at Longford, because it was dramatic all the way up to the end. We had the positions weren't settled up until the last minute of the race. So exciting stuff. So Michael Masaryk just coming through the final section of the track towards what would be the last corner. So out the last corner he comes, up to turn 1. So being cautious of that white line on the outside. Do not break that white line on the outside. He runs a little bit wide onto the straight. It's not going to give him too much momentum. It sounds strange to say that is the longest straight on this track. He's running slightly wide. So pushing a bit too hard into first, what could be called turn 2, I suppose. So over the crest, bury your car, and hopefully coming out the outside, or coming out the other side of the corner. So there's a couple of corners which are a bit deceptive. You can go, they look like corners, but you can pretty much straight line the section. But as I say, it's very difficult to figure out what section of the track you're on, because a lot of the track looks very, very similar. So hopefully our drivers have memorised 8 kilometres of road. Matthew Shepherd and that Brabham. So Matthew Shepherd pretty much ran away with the race last week in Longford. I did see in the post-race debrief that Maddie was a little bit worried that she was getting a little bit ragged towards the end, and having a bit of a questioning herself about what car to take for the next round, because they do have all different driving characteristics, and obviously you can't double up with a car you've driven before. So running slightly wide through this, what could be a flat out section. So Michael Masaryk has a Honda right behind him, so I believe that's possibly the Honda of Tony, who's managed to catch Masaryk. A slight spin for Maddie Shepherd just behind. That was well recovered. So they're already coming to near the end of the lap, where it tightens up a bit. The corners turn into hairpins. This is one of them. You don't want to hit that inside wall. And then up the hill here. Let's come back on themselves. It's one of those circuits that not a lot of people, I don't think, will know, because it's got a lot of history to it. But if you're from the younger generation, this is one of the classic courses from the 1960s. You wouldn't even know it existed. So Tony Talviti kicking on. So Maddie Shepherd has popped to the top with a 2:53.3. That's near enough close to what she was doing in practice. Tony Talviti in the second, 0.8 of a second behind Costas Kanzouris. It's Julian Paul is running over our cameraman. Kanzouris is in third, second adrift. What happens with some of these long courses? It can mean that the time difference between drivers can be bigger than you would normally see a shorter course. So this course sometimes referred to as the French Nürburgring. Similar kind of layout. The corners left to right combinations. There are 48 turns on this course. And it looks like we did have a yellow flag out on course. I did see it briefly. John van der Gies has come to grief. And will possibly not take any further part in qualification. But Maddie Shepherd pushing on, putting in even faster sector. So her first sector 48.67. Not seeing anywhere close to that. The other drivers are in the 50s. So Maddie Shepherd seems to have this first sector down. So let's have a look at one of our French drivers. So our French drivers of Romain Lebreau and Julien Paurs have been running paint jobs on each of their cars to pay homage to the Matra. So the French car that was used back in the 60s. So Romain Lebreau is currently using the Cooper tonight. Again, I'm going to have to resort to looking at my cheat sheet. Romain Lebreau has taken the Eagle in one of the rounds so far. In fact, he's been here for 2 rounds, but I've actually not marked down what his other car was, so I'm going to have to note that down. In fact, it was possibly on the list, so I can double check. So through these corners, they just seem never ending. I mean, thankfully most of these are banked, so it helps the cars go around, but so Romain Lebreau has taken the Ferrari and the Eagle. So the Honda of Masaryk pushing on. Possibly some mistakes in his first few laps, which means he's down in 8th place currently, but maybe this is going to be his faster or last lap to try and improve. That is a Brabham on fire, so Maddie Shepherd pushing that rev limiter. That is her qualification over with. The clock has hit 0, so expiring just in time, I suppose. So hopefully she has enough of a margin to hang on to this provisional pole position. Tony Talviti is in the pits as well, so he's possibly not improving. So provisional pole by 2.3 seconds. So that's a big margin, so you could obviously see that she was pushing on, considering her Brabham left the circuit in flames. So Costas Kanzouris, first sector 49.4, that's not slow. It's just the back half of the course that seems to be the hard part. So there's 4 cars on circuit at the moment. We have Costas Kanzouris in third. We have Romain Lebreau just behind him in 6th. We also have 8th place Michael Masaryk, slightly wide for Costas Kanzouris, coming into tighter hairpin section. And this is Julien Paurs, one of our French drivers, coming in 4th place. coming into the tight hairpin sections. The farm, the corner apparently. So we now have 3 left. We have, so Paul's running slightly wide. Not ideal when you hit the dirt when you're trying to brake for that hairpin. A really big spoon curve, as I'd call it, heading up the hill. So 4th place currently. He needs to find about 1.5 seconds to get onto the second. Well, he's on the second row. Can he actually get 3rd? Brabham clips him at the line, so Brabham is now 4th. Julien Paurs pops up to 2nd place on the road, so that was a great final sector for Julien Paurs, which puts him in 2nd. That's a good finish to that lap. So we have set the grid. That is us all done for qualification. So we are set for 60 minutes, but let's check the official starting order. So Maddie Shepherd with that lunched. Brabham pushing on, did get provisional pole and stayed there. Julien Paurs in 2nd. Tony Talviti on the 2nd row in the Honda, with Costas Ganzouras in 4th. Romain Lebreau pops down to 5th place in the end, with Lars Hagman 6th, Phil Brown in 7th, Michael Mazurek not able to get a represented time in 8th, it looks like, with Knights John Van der Geest leaving the qualification early. Bob Loblaw, a newcomer to the series, has decided to take the Lotus today. And then we have Bjorn Hagman in 11th, which is the last of our qualifiers. So we are set for 60 minutes around this circuit, 8 kilometres, 5 miles. Our drivers have a really big challenge ahead for them. So as I say, having a look at the schedule, we are here at Clermont Ferrand today, the 1965 circuit version of the circuit, sometimes referred to as Charade. But next week on Wednesday, we'll be heading to Fuji 1968. Now, if you don't know Fuji Speedway is around nowadays, but the 1968 version, you head into turn 1 going around flat out banking, like the banking of Monza back in the day. So it's going to be very interesting how our drivers in these particular cars, which might be well suited, it's very wide as well, so I'm very interested to see cars going around there on the first lap. And then we head to Canada for the week after, on the 20th of May, to Mosport Park. Now this is probably one of the circuits, well, I don't say probably, it is one of the circuits that these cars would have raced on back in 1967. We are using the modern version of it, but it hasn't changed since 1967, so it should be I mean, if any of you have raced sim racing games from back in the 90s or the late 90s, Grand Prix Legends had a version of Mosport Park, and we raced the 1967 cars on it. And we have another 1967 circuit, but this based in 1965, Watkins Glen, on the 27th of May. Now, I did look up the older versions of Watkins Glen. Apparently in 1948 it was just country roads, so it has changed a little bit since then, but the 1965 version is the shortened version, and you don't have any part of the loop that you have in modern day. So drivers out on the track for warm-up. Let's see what our drivers are up to, putting in their last minute qualifying, or race laps rather. So now they're on full fuel and hopefully thinking about maybe doing a practice start. It is a standing start for this race, and it is a very short run to turn 1, but they should be able to go around turn 1 pretty much side by side and then head up that short straight and hopefully sort themselves out before they come to the first or second turn on the course, which I am led to believe is the Manson curve. That's what the translation says, and I'm going with it. So I'm going to keep that to hand. I don't know if I'll be able to reference that in the race, because we've got places like the Manson curve, the golf course, the Belvedere, the Twins, something called Grave Noir, which maybe means grave or black grave, I'm not sure. The Quarry, the Champeau Crossroads, Farm Bend, the Little Bridge. There's one in French that didn't get translated, unless I possibly didn't take it down correctly. No, I didn't. No, not even going to try. That is bad. My French accent does not exist, so we're not even going to attempt that. Let's see if I can actually get that translated again. See if I've got it wrong. So it's one of the last hairpins where it says Mound of Thieves. I don't know what that is. I think that's possibly not being translated correctly. So it's one of the big spoon curves coming out in the last part of the course, and then we have a Rosier Bend right at the end. So as I say, this course was around in the 1950s, broke ground in 1957, opened in 1958, held the Formula 1 French Grand Prix in 1965, 69 and 1970, also 1972. Also was the French Motorcycle Grand Prix back in the 50s and 60s, going into the early 70s. Also the Sidecar World Championship. It'd be interesting to see sidecars go around this course. Then we have the World Sports Car Championship in 1962 and 63. The FFSA GT Championship in 1998, which would have been the modern part, with the French Touring Car Championship in the early 90s and late 90s, and the Formula 750 in 1973. So, drivers are now gridding up. Hopefully they've done their practice starts. They're going to know what their plan is coming into turn 1. Now, as I said before, we are using automatic cameras for the racing action today, so I can override if I see something on track that's particularly egregious, but it's going to pick the action for me. So we're starting quite a ways away. Looks like someone's already smoking on the line, which is not a good sign. So away they go, down towards turn 1. Looks like we've got someone heading into the pit lane. Hopefully that doesn't cause a penalty. In fact, it did. Michael Masaryk was forced into the pit lane, which means he has a drive-through penalty the next lap around. So up the first straight into turn 2. Looks like everyone is cleanly through. Shepherd leads from Kansouris in second. Over the crest for the first time into one of the fastest parts of the circuit. Now, drivers have been warned about what their rev limits are for certain cars, so they've got to stay away from that red line. No flat shifting, no accidentally downshifting too early. So, drivers have made it through. All 11 drivers have made it through. Julian Pause is in third. But it looks like Kostas Kansouris is perhaps thinking that he might be able to stay on the rear of Maddie Shepherd, put her under pressure. And it looks like Bob Loblaw has our first DNF. Unsure what that would be, but that's unfortunate for his first Grand Prix with us in this series. So continuing on, Maddie Shepherd down the hill. Stretching out a little bit of a gap. Remember I said that the first sector seemed to be her forte. She's able to put a little bit of a gap on Kostas Kansouris, which means Kostas Kansouris is going to fall into the clutches of Julian Paws and Tony Tavuti just behind. So Julian Paws is being absolutely shadowed by Tony Tavuti in that Honda. Over the brick section we come. So the flat out section down here, well, I say flat out section, you can straight line those curves. Defend early down to one of the hairpins and then back up the hill. I'd imagine there are going to be some very tired arms after the end of this race. He did say Bob Loblaw had come to a stop in the pits, but he is out on course still, so maybe that was a preemptive retirement. That was possibly couldn't have been a disconnection maybe, but he has resumed and has got going again. Way back from the rest of the field, but just finishing this race I think would be an absolute achievement. So slightly wide at the end of that. That's possibly a penalty for Julian Paws. Dipped into the pit lane. He might be lucky for that. I haven't seen a penalty come up on the screen, but he did pop into the pit lane for a little bit. That's the unfortunate problem with not having a pit wall there. Tony Tavuti up the inside after that mistake from Julian coming into turn 1, and he lost momentum onto that short straight, and Tony Tavuti is past, but can Julian stay with him? And we can see out the back of this group is Lars Hagman licking his chops thinking, what's a piece of this? So this group for 3rd, 4th and 5th are together, and there's a little bit of a gap for 6th place. We're staying with this battle between Julian Paws. That looks like he's on the back foot a little after that little bit of a mistake. Maybe he needs to get his confidence back to push a little more, but Lars Hagman in that Brabham just behind is likely shadowing what is I believe a Brabham, a Matra coloured Brabham. As we come back to Phil Brown. So Phil Brown in a blue coloured Brabham. Not far behind, Romain Lebreau. And it looks like everyone has decided to take blue cars today just to make this extra confusing for me. So the battle for 6th place between Phil Brown and Romain Lebreau. So 6th and 7th. 8th is out on his own. Michael Masaryk did have to do that stop-go penalty, or at least that drive-through penalty at the start. So it did look like he was possibly got a little bit of wheel spin and went a little wide into the pit lane, which gave him that penalty. Which is a shame. It might mean that he was possibly avoiding another car and he had no option but to take avoiding action into the pit lane, but that's dropped him back to 8th place. Now, unfortunately, in some of these races, Romain Lebreau has come to grief and he's normally missing his front fairing. Hopefully he keeps the front fairing on this car he's in at the moment. So Matty Shepherd, fastest lap of the race, 2:54.4. So 8th place out on his own. So he didn't actually lose any places. He did start in 8th place. That means he didn't actually move forwards at all. And the fact that it was not the pit lane is quite short, and it's the length of the pit straight. So pitting in and out means he didn't lose an awful lot of time, but Bjorn Hagman and John Vandergeest doing battle back in 9th and 10th. So Honda power versus Brabham power. Up to turn 2 they come. But the lead is now up to 3.5 seconds. Shepherd leads from Kanzurus in second. Talviti now up to third. And Julian Paws in fourth, with Lars Hagman not far behind, rounding out that top five. So little groups forming on the track. Not many drivers have a lonely time out here. It's probably best because it's very easy to get lost, very easy to lose your pace, very easy to lose motivation to push. So Romain Lebreau is pushing on, giving Phil Brown a lot to worry about. So 7th place is in this championship is always a bit gutting because that's one place outside the points. So dropping back to now, Tony Talviti has put some laps in, is now up to the back of Kanzurus in second. So very similar lap times from their last lap. Tony Talviti was able to put a 2:55. Kanzurus in the 2:55.9, but Tony Talviti a 2:55.2. So some pace to find for Kanzurus if he's going to hold off Talviti. But Romain Lebreau consistently under the rear exhaust pipe of Phil Brown, trying to find a way past. It's very difficult around this course, as I say. There's only one short straight, and the rest of the turns seem to blend into each other. So you possibly got to put the driver off ahead, maybe force them into a little bit of a mistake, so they run a little bit wide. The only problem being with that is the next corner is possibly going the opposite way. So if you're on the outside on one corner, you'll be in the inside for the other. So through the final turn they come, up towards turn 1. So Tony Talviti chasing on. He wants to go one place better. Looking down my cheat sheet, Tony Talviti, as I say, he's only put one round in so far. But he is following on. Kanzurus under a little bit of pressure. There's several battles on track at the moment. We are under just 10 minutes gone. So Tony Talviti unfortunately came away with a 12th place in Longford. Tied a bit early on, so we'd love to improve tonight. But as we've seen in some of these Grand Prix, and we have a challenging calendar. These courses are not easy by any means, and especially in these cars, take a certain type of driving style. So, like Kanzurus came over that hill, looked like he left the ground. So Kanzurus is possibly wanting to try to the inside, making sure that even no door open for Talviti. So these drivers are very well matched. This is given the opportunity for Shepherd to stretch out a lead like she did in Longford last week, whilst the rest of the drivers battle behind. It gives second and third. It slows them up basically, and so a group of second and third, but third, or rather fourth and fifth, still battling on behind, but Gap has opened up to 1.6 now. But a battle I'm really interested to is this battle here. So Romain Lebreau is now still harrying Phil Brown, but is not able to find a way by just yet. So as I was saying about, as these Grand Prix go on, slight wiggle from Romain Lebreau coming on out of the final turn. As these Grand Prix go on, particularly these longer courses, it seems that fatigue sometimes sets in, concentration starts to wane, and means that drivers have been making mistakes. There is a little bit of a lull in the middle of the Grand Prix, but it seems to kick off right at the end, giving me some excitement to watch and commentate on. So, Romain Lebreau really getting it all wrong coming into that turn, probably expecting, or not expecting, Phil Brown to slow down that much. I'm sure Romain Lebreau would love to be doing better at his home Grand Prix, technically. He was gutted with his first race of the season, 7th place, so again just outside the points. He looks to find himself just outside the points. But he had a torrid time at Longford, unfortunately came home in 10th place, missing his front fairing again. But he's able to follow Phil Brown. Phil Brown's not making enough mistakes to get past, but these sections, if a car was following the racing line, there is no real way through. Lars Hagman now on the back of Julian Paws. Seemed to drop back a little, but has now regained some momentum and is able to get as close as possible back to the battle between 7th and 6th places. So this is Brabham versus Cooper. So Brabham in front of us. We're in the Cooper at the moment. Romain Lebreau up towards the hairpin. Is decided to take a little bit of a punt. That was a great move, but runs a little bit wide, and Phil Brown is straight through. That was a good effort. He signalled that he was going up the inside quite early, but just couldn't quite get that car stopped. But that was a good effort. But he has now shown his hand that he's possibly wanting to overtake at that point. Brown going slightly wide, but was able to get back to the second apex. Come to the end of the course. So Lebreau is thinking outside the box a little. Thinking of where possibly get an overlap. So Lars Hagman is possibly feeling the same. Whereabouts is Julian Paws? A bit weaker, a bit slower, and perhaps showing your car in the mirrors, so makes a little bit of a mistake. Every corner seems to blend into the next. Left to right, all the way through. And that's Bob Law just moving out of the way of the leaders there. He's still on the course in his Lotus, so just getting to the end, as I say, I think will be an achievement enough. It's interesting to see what kind of lines these drivers are racing on. How close they are cutting it into the dirt on the inside as well. So looking back at results, Lars Hagman is currently 5th in the championship at the moment with 5 points. He's only 1 point behind 3rd and 4th in the championship. And one driver that holds 3rd is Julian Paws ahead of us with 6 points. Julian Paws was able to get a 2nd last time out. Lars Hagman did get a podium. He was able to grab a third place, but he was very lucky to actually get a point back for 6th place at Longford last week, but pushing on. Looks like he's got good pace. In fact, both of these drivers look like they have good pace. So I'm looking at the list. Tony Talviti has now dropped down to 5th place. Didn't see it on the screen, so I wonder if it was a mistake by Talviti. Looking at the lap times, 2:59.9. That looks like possibly going off the road. I didn't actually see a stricken Honda, but these two drivers must have passed him. So Tony Talviti now down to 5th place. Matthew Shepherd pushing on. 254.0, so it's still slightly slower. It looks like Tony Talviti has come to a grinding halt. I don't know if that is engine. He's pulled over to the side of the road. His engine is still running. So possibly another technical problem for John van der Geest. Possibly real life getting in the way, but that's unfortunate for John. He is out the way. So Julian Paws still kicking on in 3rd, but not able to drop Lars Hagman behind. But I can hear that Honda not far behind Tony Talviti just after that mistake, but not close enough to be able to come into vision. There he is. You can see that Honda just behind, so it possibly won't be long till that Honda of Tony Talviti is on the back of these two, so making the two-way fight into a three-way. So just over 41 minutes to go. It's Shepherd that leads. Kanzura is out on his own in 2nd place, but this battle rages on between Paws and Hagman for 3rd and 4th. And then we have Talviti just far behind. You can hear that Honda in the background. There he is. So it looks like John van der Geest has got going again. So it's like an unfortunate, possibly an accident by Bob Loblaw. But he's managed to get going again. There he is. He's facing the right way. It's a very tight course to be able to get your bearings again, where you are and what direction you're supposed to be pointing. So I wonder whether Lars Hagman is possibly feeling the pressure from Talviti behind as well, wanting to get past past Paws rather, before Talviti gets on his rear, because it's the last thing you want is to be able to have to fight someone ahead and have to defend from someone behind. Makes it really, really complicated. So slight lock up from Julian Paws, but didn't run wide. He actually made the apex, but that's not going to do his tyres any good. So Lars Hagman very close through this section. Possibly the hardest section, when all of the corners just seem to be never-ending hairpins. Now coming down to what is the final corner of the track. Slight lock up again from Julian Paws. No harm done. Now again, driver's going to have to be very aware of that white line on the outside. We've already seen one driver get a penalty. So the gap behind that Honda, ever-closing Honda of Talviti, was 3.6. It's now 2.8. So he's putting in the fast laps, closing on these two. So the battle between Phil Brown and Romain Lebreau seems to have come to I wouldn't say a halt, but it's stopped for the time being. So just being told that could be the Brabham BT BT11 ahead versus the BT24. Now I did think that possibly because Julien Pause is one of our French drivers, and he has been running Matra tribute skins on all of the cars he's driven, which makes every car blue, no matter what car they are. But possibly, it does look like it is slightly different. You can see the engine cover on the back, so possibly running the BT11. A different engine for the Brabham as well. So that's maybe why you can see Lars Hagman catching in certain sections of this track that the BT24 is a bit better at. But that Honda is closing all the time. The gap is now down to 1.1 seconds. So soon we're going to have a Honda on the back of this Brabham of Lars Hagman. So Lars Hagman now really pushing on, thinking, right, I need to get past him very quickly, slightly wide, putting some wheels on the dirt. Looks like he might have the horsepower to get up the hill, but Julien Pause up the inside, so side by side through this hairpin section. That was well driven by both of these drivers, giving each other space. A slight mistake. It looked like Julien Pause hit the dirt in the braking zone, couldn't get it slowed down, but the banking was able to keep the momentum, and he was able to stay on the inside for the next corner. But that Honda of Talviti is menacing behind. So the two-way battle is now going to turn into three-way. So it looks like, I'm looking on the timing sheets, unfortunately Lebro has now dropped 6.7 seconds behind Brown. So maybe a slight mistake from Lebro. 2:59. to Phil Brown's 2:58, so he's not dropping by much, but still dropping a second or so. So through this, one of the fastest parts of the circuit, you've really got to judge these apexes very, very well. Particularly when the apex of some of these corners are directly shaded under a tree. So coming down the hill again. So Lars Hagman must be thinking, I must get past. This Honda is getting closer and closer. But that BT11 ahead of Julien Pause, the little engine that could, is managed to keep in these drivers. That is Lars Hagman around. Unfortunately, it was obscured by the trees, so we didn't see it. It's unfortunate. So Lars Hagman now, in all that kerfuffle, has dropped down to 5th place, which means that Tony Talviti can now have a clean run at Julien Pause ahead. So Honda Power versus Cooper, or rather Brabham Climax. So just over 34 minutes to go. Shepherd still leads. Now the gap is up to 14 seconds. But this battle between 3rd and 4th, this could rage on throughout the entire race. We have seen a couple of mistakes from Pause into the braking zone. But John van der Geest did manage to get going again. And he did say he would be glad to just finish this race. So 10th place, slightly down the order. Now, Romain Lebro now has Masaryk in for company, so he has dropped back towards another driver. So rather than chasing Phil Brown, he's now dropped back towards Masaryk. Hagman back in 9th place, on his own. But I think that's the lap car of Bob Loblaw just behind. So Phil Brown looks like he's also another driver that has taken the BT11. So 8 cars to choose from and 6 rounds in this championship. Still no one has decided to take the BRM. Seems to be the least popular choice. It's probably the best sounding car, but it's the least popular choice at the moment. So we haven't seen much of Maddie Shepherd since the start of this race. Fastest lap and fastest lap. There aren't any points for fastest lap. So I'm hoping in all of these fastest laps she's not hitting the red line. And we did see that she was the only driver to pop an engine. Went up in a ball of flame. So Lebro now being shadowed by Masaryk, who I think had to take that drive-through penalty at the start due to a pit lane infringement. Not sure why our director wants to watch the leader. The leader's out front and very clean, very clearly so. So Bjorn Hagman pushing on in 9th. Kanzouras in second place. Look like that's a lap car ahead of 10th place John van der Geest. It is indeed. So whatever problem John van der Geest had, he's managed to get going again. So nearly at half distance for our drivers. Arms have got to be absolutely aching. Can't imagine doing a whole 60 minutes around this course. I tried a few laps myself. I could do about 2 or 3 laps, but it was tiring after a while. Probably just as tiring as perhaps a Nordschleife race. Seems very similar in length, but I just think the physicality of it, there's corners everywhere, just feeding into each other. So Taubedi has dropped a little bit away from Pause. It's possibly a mistake in that last lap. Now Zurus is just about to lap, or put a lap on John van der Geest ahead. So the closest battle out on track is Michael Masaryk. Even though our director wants to look elsewhere, I'm not sure why he wants to look at this battle for nothing. But I'm going to insist that he looks at this battle. Michael Masaryk coming up behind Romain Lebro. Lady Shepherd pushing on in the lead. But this battle between second is now, I wouldn't say it's a battle, but the Honda of John van der Geest being lapped. So Maddie Shepherd could possibly back off a little. Now we're past half distance. She's got about 16 seconds. So side by side coming up to the first turn. Romain Lebro had to put a defensive move in. Otherwise Masaryk would have gotten alongside and through. But that was well defended by Romain Lebro, who was knocking on the door of a point. But is now trying to defend from 8th place Michael Masaryk. This is one of those classic Grand Prix. The circuit style of the day. I mean, it's not really a circuit, it's just country roads. It's what they seemed to have back then. Majorly dangerous. And a huge challenge for any drivers through the 50s, 60s and 70s. So you would have had drivers such as Jochen Rindt, Chris Amon, Jackie Stewart racing around here at full blast. With cars that are really low to the ground. we've got shorter courses coming up in the calendar. It's strange that we started off with some of the longer and harder courses in this series, but the longer the season goes on, the shorter the courses are actually going to get. We're actually finishing in Watkins Glen, which is the shortest course on the calendar. I believe should be a lap time of about 104 to 105. I think the faster drivers are possibly going to be putting in a 103 or 2. But we'll have to see. But I'm looking forward to Watkins Glen. Is in the 60s configuration is actually one of my favourite 60s courses. It hasn't appeared a lot in sim racing. Hagman a little bit lonely down in 9th. But I think a lot of these drivers are probably fully aware that anything can happen in some of these races. We did have a few accidents at Mount Panorama, and it looks like Lars Hagman, it does say DNF on the tower there, so has Lars Hagman possibly come to grief? He may have done. I'm not seeing 6th place on the track map, and he's dropping down the order, so is that our first? It could have been an engine failure, or it could have just been loss of concentration and ending up over the bank, but I'll possibly find out after the race is finished. So that's possibly our first official retirement. So Julian Pors has been able to pull out a bit more of a gap on Tony Talviti. Perhaps he's been able to shepherd that smaller and lighter Brabham through some of these turns better than the Honda of Talviti behind. But it does mean that he won't be able to use the BT11 for the upcoming rounds, which are Fuji 1968. So that's going to be our Grand Prix next week. So we're heading over to Japan. But I'm really interested to see how these cars go through the banking of 1968 version of Fuji. So Lars Hagman has appeared back in the pit lane. So I'm wondering whether it was possibly a disconnection, or perhaps the game just lost timing. It does actually look like he's out again, so some interesting things happening with the timing, leading me to believe that someone has disconnected or possibly retired. But Lars Hagman is now down in 9th place, so whatever the problem was, it has cost him some points, which means that Phil Brown is now up into the points with Romain Lebreau currently in 6th place, but not far behind. I can see it on the timing tower. Romain Lebreau is being followed by this driver that wants that extra point. He took a penalty not long into the race, a drive-through penalty, because of, unfortunately, dipping 2 wheels into the pit lane. But Masaryk is now after that single point, because the points only go down to 6th place. Costas Kanzer is out on his own. Julian Pors is possibly catching. He's only 2 seconds behind Kanseris. I'm looking down the list to see what Masaryk. So yeah, Masaryk has got better as the season has gone on. He got a 5th place in round 1 and a 3rd place in round 2. So he wants some points out of this. He's currently 4th in the championship, level on points with Julian Pors. Julian Pors is possibly going to extend the gap because he's further up the road. But Maddie Shepherd now 21 seconds in the lead. Hopefully not pushing that Brabham too far. John Van der Geest now up to 9th. Lars Hagman down 1 more place to 10th. I think possibly the because this course is so long, it does take a while for the timing to update itself. So Romain Lebreau and Masaryk, we're finally back to this battle. We've been wanting to see this for a little while. Two drivers that seem to be very well matched, and it is, I don't know whether it's a Brabham Repco or a Brabham Climax that Romain Lebreau has chosen. We'll know when we look at the rear engine. So early on our director was focusing on the battles, but he's decided to move around it. Look at this gaining battle of Julian Paws, who has now caught second place. And Tony Talviti has also caught up to third as well. This could be the battle coming down to the end of the race. Slight lock up from Kanzuras coming into this hairpin section. So is Kanzuras struggling coming up to the end of this race? Because Paws has closed in quite quick succession. But again, catching is one thing, passing is another. The immortal words of Murray Walker. So coming down to the last corner of the track, a wide line. Trying to get a tight exit. So mistakes could creep in. I'm seeing on the track map that 7th place of Phil Brown. And I did see the marker disappear. Is that our first official retirement? I'm not going to believe it until it officially goes to the bottom of the timesheets, but that might be 7th place of Brown. That could be our retirement. I did see his marker on the track map actually become static, so could that be a mistake? Phil Brown has been pretty unlucky in this series so far. At Mount Panorama in the first round, he ran into the Armco and his rear wheels were suspended above the track and he had no traction to get going again, so had to retire. He did a full barrel roll at Longford last week. So that BT11 looks slightly slippy, slightly loose coming through some of these turns. It does look like Julian is pushing it with these running on the dirt. So now this is a bit different for Julian because he has been chased in this early part of the race and has withstood the pressure. But he's now doing the chasing. So what has Julian got for the driver ahead this time? 20 minutes to go. So we are 2/3 of the way through this race. So I'm interested to see what kind of tactics Julian Paws has in this apparently slower, slightly slower BT11. Chasing Kanzuras in the Cooper. So very nimble cars. Maybe that's why they chose these cars for this particular course, just so that they had a little bit more turning power. Slight lock up again from Kanzuras into this corner. So this is a great battle. So we saw that drivers could go side by side through here before, but no way through for Paws at this point. He's maybe thinking maybe a slight dive down into the last turn because there is track widens a little and you do take a wider line. No, it doesn't feel like going up the inside here. Slightly loose on the exit, trying to get the power down as quick as possible. Just needs to get a good exit here and stay in the slipstream all the way up this, what is this short straight. 0.3 of a second behind. The lead is now up to 23 seconds, so while these two battle on, Shepherd has been giving them a chance to get away. So the fastest part of the circuit. Full commitment through the trees. And down towards what looks like a hairpin section. So Phil Brown is still saying a DNF on the tower here, so I'm thinking this could be terminal, which would be unfortunate for Phil Brown. Romain Lebro, was that a mistake from Romain Lebro? And that looks like Masaryk is through. So it looks like he possibly had to give up the inside. Looks like the car is very loose at the end of this race. So possibly suffering with, I mean, it possibly wouldn't be tyre wear issues because these tyres do not significantly wear, but tyre heat could be an issue. So is that a smoking engine as well? I saw some slight smoke. It might have been just dust. I thought I saw the telltale signs of some white smoke coming out of that car. And I'm sure we did see a couple of smoking cars on the grid as well. So these cars don't like you over revving them. At least this is 6th place for Romain Lebro, so that is a single point. But the battle for 3rd, 4th. Julian Pause trying to chase Katsouras ahead, but has dropped back a little bit, but he's now got a mirror full of Honda yet again. Slight lock up again coming into the spoon section. Fastest lap of the race now, down to qualifying times of 2:53.79 for Shepherd ahead. But this battle for 2nd, 3rd and 4th. We've got just over 15 minutes to decide the tail end of the podium. Now, didn't I say that things would start kicking off near the end of the race? It starts to get a little bit dramatic. Drivers start to get a little bit leery. Cars start to feel a little bit looser. Arms have got to be aching. 48 turns for this course. 48. That is a lot of turns. So under the trees, fastest part of the circuit. This is possibly where Julian Pause is weakest, and that Honda behind looked like it did close through that section. But this is a fantastic battle for 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Slightly wide for Julian Pause, possibly giving the Honda of Talviti behind a little bit of hope. But I think Talviti's best chance is getting on the back of this BT11 of Julian Pause through turn 1 and possibly slipstreaming down the straight into turn 2. But he's got to be able to get on the back of this nimble Brabham. But we are seeing the little wiggles of drivers getting slight oversteer. But all it's going to take is one small mistake, one touch of the dirt, perhaps coming into a braking zone. So Julian seems to have got this section. Seems to be closing on Katsouras' head. So this part of the course, I mean, it's got curves on it, but you could have flat going straight through that section of the track, disregarding that they were actually turns. Julian Pause got a bit of a swapper on, which gives Talviti a little more chance. I felt that maybe Talviti wanted to go up the inside there, but didn't have quite enough overlap. So now Julian Pause is now under pressure. So he was pushing up towards Kanzurus, but now he's on the defensive. So it's a bit of a hard predicament to get to be in. So if we look at it from Tony's onboard, this is what you can see. Slight lock up. That's the mistake that we were possibly waiting for. So this gives Tony an opportunity to close up into turn 1, but that Honda looks like it's very sluggish out of the final corner. But this is, I think, his best opportunity he's ever had. I think I called it, didn't I? If he got he got the exit side by side up to turn 1. But the corner coming up is unfortunately pointing the other way. So we're going back the other way. It does look like we've had a collision. So something happened through that section of the track. We did see them running side by side for a little bit, but that's unfortunate. Which means that Kanzurus can now get away. And we are back to the battle between... Oh, Julian Pors makes a mistake. Got that apex all wrong. And Talviti is now through onto the last step of the podium. So possibly frustration creeping in for some of these drivers. So Kanzurus is possibly feeling a little bit lucky. He was able to get away out of all of that melee. And Eddie Shepherd still pushing on, 27 seconds. Possibly want to turn the engine down if you could. So Julian Pors was possibly looking at a second place, but through a couple of mistakes has now dropped down to 4th. He's not really in any threat of going down any further, because Romain Le Bro is 70 seconds behind. That's 70 seconds behind. Now, was that a mistake from Masaryk? I'm looking at the... That may have been Masaryk last time out, lap time of 3:06. With Romain Le Bro a 3-minute lap. So have we had another coming together back there? I mean, they were very close to each other early on. But Romain Le Bro is now sitting on 2 points for 5th. So we'll be impressed with that, particularly as this being his French Grand Prix. His home Grand Prix, as it were. So Romain Le Bro now looking like he's out on his own. His car is still intact this time, so no particular worries about ripping that fairing off, which is good to see. Now, it does look like we've possibly had, with 10 minutes to go, Phil Brown is definitely going to be in 11th place at the end of this race, and I think finally Bob Loblaw has DNF'd in 10th. But just finishing the race is an achievement. But I think Lars Hagman possibly would have wanted more out of this race. Currently in 9th place. I don't know if it was a technical issue or perhaps just one of those silly little mistakes that happens near the end of a race. I'm looking on the track map. That's the leader. It's a yellow flag for the leader. Maybe a slight mistake. So with just 8 minutes to go, maybe the mistakes are creeping in for Shepherd, but maybe that was a track map issue. Got me slightly worried. I believe that is the lap car of Hagman just behind, so maybe maybe the yellow flag was possibly just a Shepherd passing the lap car of Lars Hagman. So Maddie Shepherd now possibly lifting and coasting all the way to the end of this race. Costas Kanzurus can possibly do the same. He has a gap to Talviti behind of 11 seconds. Ron Hagman now up to 7th place, tantalisingly close to a point, but he's 36 seconds behind 6th place of Masaryk. And John van der Geest, that problem where he had to come to a stop. He's currently in 8th place. So a lot of these drivers, I would imagine, picked these cars for completely different reasons. We've seen possibly a few people taking some of the more nimble cars like the Cooper and the Brabham BT11. But the Honda seems to be a popular choice today. Along with the... I mean, it does say Brabham in the list, but that could be a Brabham BT24 or a Brabham BT11. So you could say Brabhams are the most popular choice today. So Julian Paws now back on the back of the Honda of Tauviti. So after that slight mistake that put him off the track as he cut the apex a bit too much. So possibly this last step of the podium is still up for grabs. And we possibly have about 3 laps to go. Just under 7 minutes on the clock. I think this is possibly the last place you'd want any kind of damage, particularly when 48 turns on this track. If you have any kind of damage, it would make it a very, very difficult Grand Prix. But can you imagine doing 2 hours around here? I can't. So fastest part of the track. This is probably the most impressive section of the track. Does remind me a little bit of the Nürburgring. But then the corners start tightening up as you come into this section. One of the tightest corners of the track. You bury your car into that apex, into the banking. Let it guide it round. So Shepherd leads with just over 5 minutes to go. Kanzuras second, so the gap has dropped. So that possibly that yellow flag I did as Pause makes a little bit of a mistake. Looks like his car went right when he meant to go left. I don't know if he hit the dirt a little in the braking zone. But mistakes creeping in right at the end of this race. So I did say he was possibly pushing it by running over some of these dirt sections. That's possibly come to bite him late on. So looks like our drivers have spaced out quite a lot on the track. So Shepherd out in the lead. That's a lap car just behind of 9th place, Lars Hagman. And we have Kostas Kanzouris in the Cooper just behind. Romain Nebro also in the Cooper. The Matra coloured Cooper. And Julian Paws in the BT11. So he's now fallen at 6 seconds behind Tony Tauviti in a Honda. John van der Geest still pushing on in 8th place. I think the thing about these Grand Prix is you never really want to give up. No matter what happens, 60 minutes is a long time, especially around a course like this. But as I say, the courses are going to get shorter as the series goes along. So we're going to end with possibly some conventional Grand Prix. We'll be in Fuji in Japan next week. The week after we'll be in Mosport for the Canadian Grand Prix, and then the last round is the Watkins Glen 1965. So the shortest version of Watkins Glen. It's going to be very tight away from the line at Watkins Glen. I'm just going to brace myself in that Grand Prix. But the way Maddie Shepherd is going on, possibly another win this time out, so that would mean 3 wins on the bounce. Putting the championship even further out of the reach of Kantzouras, currently in second place. So 9 points for first, 6 for second. There are no bonus points in this championship for fastest lap or pole position. So just under 3 minutes to go. So just outside the points at the moment, Bjorn Hagman. He was very lucky at Longford. He just managed to keep it on the road and capitalise on other people's mistakes. Yeah, he was able to get away with a 5th place that time out, but finding this place tough. Dropped back early on. But Matty Shepherd has been able to make this Brabham work around here. So that distinctive engine note of that Honda. Beautiful car. But Julian Paws has been in the mix all of this Grand Prix. He's either been chasing somebody or being chased. I think that possibly mistakes have creeped in right at the end. I'll have to get a... I'll have to take note of what drivers say at the end of the post-race briefing, because it'll give an insight as to what was actually going on. So 1 minute 20 seconds to go, so this is the last lap of the race as Matty Shepherd has crossed the line. Kantzouras can relax in second. So, looking at lap times of Matty Shepherd, lap times have now dropped into the 2:56 area, so relaxing a little more, with a little bit more margin for error. But I think Romain Lebreau, if he's able to finish where he is at the moment, will be pleased of this finish. Lars Hagman is showing DNF on the tower there. I wonder if he's called it a day. 1 lap before the flag. So Kostas Kantzouras second in the championship. This will drop him even further behind Matty Shepherd, but it's still a good 6 points. 9 points for a win, 6 points for second. It will be 2 podiums for Kantzouras, so the clock has run out. So just want to complete the last lap. Third and fourth are together again. Paws is back on the podium. What's happened in this last portion of this race? Paws has now got past Talviti again. So has there been a mistake by Talviti in the late part of this race, which has now dropped him off the podium? He was looking at third place, but that's unfortunate. So just coming through the last sector of the lap, coming down towards the hairpin section, drop down the hill towards this first hairpin. Got to make sure you don't hit the wall on the inside of the curve there. No cutting of apexes. I mean, this course is really reminiscent of a rally course. Now we've got 7th place ahead there. I think 7th place would probably do well to possibly let Matty Shepherd through here, because he's coming up to the final corner of the track. So it would mean that he wouldn't have to do, and he does. He pulls over to let the leader through. So Matty Shepherd comes across the line and will win the French Grand Prix at Clermont Ferrand. So that's the 3rd win on the bounce for Matty Shepherd. Controlled it from the front. Kanzuris is going to come home in second, it looks like. I think he does. The director is looking at other things at the moment. So Kanzuris comes over the line in second. So Julian Paws maybe thinks himself lucky. He's able to scrape away with a podium. Comes across the line in third. So I wonder what happened to Talvidi in the end. He will get some points for where he finishes in fourth. But interesting finish to this race. So Talviti has finished. Romain Lebro still on the track at the moment. So you can say 6th place just behind. So is there a last sting in the tail between 5th and 6th here? So coming down to the last hairpin section of this track. Romain Lebro has only got this left, the right, the left. But Masaryk is putting the final push in for this last part of the race. That's 5th place ahead. So just 2 turns to go. We've got this left-hander and then the right-hander. Romain Lebro is possibly going to bring this home in 5th. That's a great finish. Very close in the end between these two though. So grandstand finish. Hopefully Romain Lebro wasn't carrying any damage there. So 5th for Romain Lebro and 6th for Masaryk. So an interesting finish, an interesting race all around. We had a couple of retirements, which is unfortunate, but we come away with what is a quite satisfying French Grand Prix. So let's go through the official scores, or the provisional scores for the French Grand Prix at Clermont Ferrand. So let's have a look at what the official finish is. Here we go. So Matty Shepherd comes away with 1st place. Dominated from the start, was able to pull away from the rest. So the top 3, Kostas Kanzuris in the 2nd and Julian Paws, they are the top 3 in the championship. So this should space things out a little. So chopping and changing. Tony Talviti was up to 3rd at one point, but maybe mistakes creeping in. We did see a collision under the trees between Julian and Tony Talviti, so maybe a little bit of a miscommunication. But Romain Lebro comes home in, I think, the best finish of this season. 5th place, indeed it is. His last good finish was 7th place in round 1, so 5th place. Good finish at his home Grand Prix. 6th place is Michael Masaryk, who coming back from a penalty at the start. And it did believe he got a pit lane infringement. It looked like he possibly got a wiggle on. It was quite hard to see from where the grid was forming up, but the one car stepped into the pit lane, and stewards did warn the drivers that they would possibly get a penalty if they cross over into the pit lane. But thankfully the pit lane is quite short, so he didn't lose a lot of time and was able to come back, or fight back from 8th place back to 6th place on the road. So 7th place, Bjorn Hagman outside the points, and possibly a little off the pace as well. His best finish this season has been a 5th, so possibly going to be slightly annoyed that he wasn't able to bring it home a bit closer to the top 6. John van der Geest, we did see that he stopped out on course for a little bit, so I wonder if real life got in the way to stop that Honda out on the course somewhere. I'm kind of glad that his engine didn't overheat, but saw Lars Hagman drop off from 5th place, so I'm going to have to find out from possibly post-race briefing to see what happened to Lars Hagman, because I didn't see what happened on cameras. But Bob Loblaw and the Lotus. This was his first round with us today. Came home with a 10th place, but unfortunately DNF'd probably 3/4 of the way through this race. Already a lap down, and I think we have one left on the last page, which is the 11th place of Phil Brown. Not sure what happened to Phil Brown. Phil Brown was in the top 5 early on, so he's possibly going to be a little annoyed with how that turned out. But that's what we have for our provisional results today. So, looking ahead at our schedule, we have Fuji 1968. Fuji 1968 is going to be an interesting round because Fuji 1968 is the layout of the track where the drivers come into the first turn completely flat out around the banking. Now, the banking didn't stay around for long, obviously because of safety concerns and possibly because of fatalities and things like that. But we're running the 1968 version of that next Wednesday. So that should be very interesting. And then we head to 2 tracks which are on the 1967 F1 calendar, which is Mosport in Canada. So we're running the modern version of it, but it is not changed since the 60s. So it's going to be pretty much the same. So if you've driven 1967 cars in the game Grand Prix Legends, then the layout will make a lot of sense to you. And then the final round, we get to the shortest course of the series, which is Watkins Glen 1965. Now, it has a different start-finish straight to the modern version. If you're familiar with the modern version, then this course might look a little bit different and a bit alien to you, but there are some corners that are the same as modern day, but we don't have the boot section, so we should expect lap times probably at fastest around 103, 104, so the shortest course on the circuit, or the series rather, on the 27th of May. So we're going to go out with a bang. There is a couple of straights and passing places, so that should be very interesting. Now I do have the provisional championship standings. So looking at the season standings, we have Maddie Shepherd, as expected, is at the top of the standings, with Costas Kanzouras in second. So the lead is now up to, if I can do my maths correctly, that is 12 points, I believe. So that's a hell of a lead. That's more than a win away. So it's possibly a case of maybe wrapping up the championship next week. So Costas Kanzouras stays in second. Now the gap has grown 15 points to Julian Paws in third rather, with 10 points, and Michael Masaryk in fourth. Unfortunately not scoring a lot today, but comes home with a single point, and we'll have 7 points on the board. 5th place for Lars Hagman, did not score today, which means he now drops a bit further down the table with 5 points. Bjorn Hagman, his brother, also did not score today, so level on points with Jim Cavallo, who we didn't see today. So level on 3 points for 6th and 7th place. Tony Talviti grabbed a couple of points today. In fact, it says 3 on the table there. In 8th place. Romain Lebreau gets some points today, 2 points. And last in the table, unfortunately not scoring so far, is the unlucky Phil Brown. So hopefully we'll see them out next week. So hopefully we'll have some more drivers on the course next time out. If you want to join us, you're more than welcome. Drivers are welcome to join any of our series midway through the season. So simracing.co.uk. Sign up with any of the series we've got available. We do run R Factor 2, Le Mans Ultimate, Automobilista 2, and there's a couple of Assetto Corsa series coming up. So if you like what you see, give this a like and possibly subscribe for more, because we'll be back next week for some more Formula 1 1967 action. So I look forward to commentating on that and bringing it to you. So I've been your host, Neil Wood. Thank you for joining us for this Formula 1 1967 Championship, and we'll see you next week. See you later.